And hello and welcome to AleksConnects Sandbox session number 40. Again, every session is going to be continuous, so I guess, yeah, the next session is going to be 41, but it's going to be in Russian and etc. It will basically continue, so keep up with the number of sessions, I guess. My name is Alex, and today we continue in simplification still. So, again, this session is going to be in English for the Russian audience. Для русскоговорящей аудитории, говорю, если русскоговорящая аудитория затаранится, просто читайте штучку вот там, внизу, по сути, пишите мне, и я сменю язык на русский, но в целом сессия будет на английском, как бы. Вот, если есть какие-то вопросы, задавайте их на русском. Вот, и я, собственно, переключусь на русский. Но в целом сессия у нас английская, поэтому поехали. So, yeah, get back to English. Throughout today's session, my plan is to basically, we will continue to cover simplification. I tried to work outside of the streams. The only thing that I managed to do is this version. So basically, yeah, like this three quarters view. One thing that I tested in this 3/4 view is the pelvis area, which is something that we need to come up. So just basically to heads up, what we're doing, we're trying to simplify a human form the best way possible by trying to keep it, like, again, this is an organic soft in terms of all categories that we have. Again, if you're not familiar with categories, check out the previous streams. We have like categories of softs, solids, and elements. We're not talking about elements yet because this is a prerogative of the rendering. We kind of covered solids, and now we're working with softs. And with softs, we finished covering hybrids, non-organic softs such as pillows, soft toys, and etc. And what we're doing now is basically we're trying to cover non-organic softs. We also kind of touch upon the drapery, but we can't fully finish drapery until we will learn everything that drapery has contact with. And usually drapery directly have contact with human body, especially if it's clothes. So because of this, we kind of tried to work with drapery a little bit, but then we basically transferred into the human form. And now I'm trying to find the best way to simplify human form, and throughout yesterday's session I kind of got to the point that we need to find a way to simplify it based on the skeleton, and the reason is because of this. So again, we have 3 categories of soft: organic hybrids, non-organic hybrids that we covered, and drapery. So everything has its own kind of points of covering. So if we're working with organic hybrids, we need to think about primitives, joints, or roots for vegetation. And for the human form, we're going to talk about joints, shapes, and form lines. And I tried to find a good balance of simplification, starting with the joints, because we need to understand how human body operates before we will be able to do something about it. Because again, we're not going to be able to properly work with the human body unless we understand its function. I mean, how these things are bending, what is the limitation, and etc. Because yes, you can imagine a pose, certain pose inside of your brain, but you're not going to be able to put it properly on the canvas unless you will understand the function, or unless you have like tons of experience. But again, if you don't have tons of experience, you have to find a way. And for me personally, because I don't have a lot of experience, I'm finding a best way possible for me to simplify it. So we will try to do that. Again, I will continue what I basically worked with tomorrow. Oh, what? Yesterday. And we will try to come up with as many simplifications as possible. So the main idea is to simplify each part of the skeleton. The reason why I decided to start with the skeleton, because skeleton for me is something that will help me to understand joints. Because if I'm going to work with joints like this, like I created with the hand, it's not necessarily going to be a good idea. Like I tried to do some kind of a joint operations in here with just strict lines with the gesture, but it didn't necessarily work. I need to have a little bit more information, and skeleton is a good way for us to basically understand how things are operating. And what skeleton also will help us to do, though, and what type of problems the skeleton will help us to solve, is skeleton will help us to explain soft areas of the body. For instance, this area of the body, if we're going to know where exactly the bone is placed inside of this area, we will know what part is going to be the softest, and what part of this portion of the leg is going to be harder than softer. So basically it will help us to predict the behavior of this area in the future. So again, I'm not going to talk that much today. The main idea today is to basically try and test out a lot of stuff, so this is exactly what I will do. So let me just start to do that. Ugh. Let's check the sound and go. Just start to do that. Here, go. So again, I will continue to experiment, and then I will try to come up with a type of simplification that will be similar to what we created here. So again, we have a sphere for our funny bone. Hopefully I will name bones properly. If not, don't hesitate to basically correct me if I'm wrong. Right here, I want to simplify almost everything in the skeleton to basically be that simple. I mean, we're going to use basic primitives for that. Again, for instance, the funny bone could be simplified by a sphere in its origin, in the point of rotation, where is the main joint happening. Then we could basically create a cylinder from the other side, which is, of course, here. And then the only thing that we need to do is just basically connect them together with a silhouette of the bone itself. And understand, of course, and showcase the form lines. And I will try to simplify almost everything in a human skeleton that way. It's not necessarily 100% the best way to simplify it, but again, every artist is going to find their own way to simplify these things, and this is my logical way to simplify things. Hopefully it will work eventually, but again, if not, we will correct ourselves. It's not that big of a deal. In the end, it's all about trying and learning and making yourself better, and everything that we're going to do potentially could make us better. So outside of the stream, I tried to kind of figure out how this part of the bone is going to work. So again, we're going to imagine a cylinder in this particular area. Then we're going to kind of probably create some type of a modified cylinder. Again, it's kind of will be similar to the cylinder, but one of the parts of the cylinder is going to be bigger. Somewhat like this. So like imagine like you are making it bigger, scaling it, and then there's going to be another one here, and they're just going to connect together. So that way we will be able to create a kind of simpler version of this part. And then we're going to have kind of a tilted cylinder here, which will connect here. This is, by the way, a questionable thing, like double cylinders in here. The only reason why I created double cylinders in here is because we have a pretty extended, I mean, it seems like we have two cylinders in here, in this part of the bone, from the side view. So it definitely looks like a cylinder. By the way, the cylinder has to be tilted, so it's not going to be like the straight one. This kind of tilt is super important. So again, it's going to be tilted, and it's going to look like a cylinder here, but it kind of has to look like a double cylinder here. So ideally, it will connect with the main cylinder, but then there's going to be some type of an extension from the side view. So yeah, let's just continue to do that. So again, most thing that I will try to do throughout this stream and the rest of the streams is my main concern at this particular point is to find a way to simplify each part of the body from the standpoint of joints first, because again, joints will help us to understand how human body operates, and once we will understand how human body operates, we will be able to build a good base for it. For instance, we could build a pretty good base for it based on the skeleton, and then basically add modified primitives, which we will think about later. Like what type of primitives we're going to add here, we actually need to design them too. We need to find a way how to better simplify them to look more organic. Because again, I talked about it later previously, that if we're going to make human simplification too blocky, it's not going to look organic, and in result, it's not going to look believable. It will take away from the dynamic, it will take away from a lot of things. So because of this, instead of just picturing it as a regular cylinder, we're going to slightly modify it in certain areas. So for instance, like make it in one part a little bit bigger, one part a little bit like this, and in the end we're still kind of getting a similar to the cylindrical form, but the cylindrical form we need to make it a little bit more organic. But this is something that we're going to work with only after we will finish with the skeleton. Because again, I believe the skeleton is one of the most important stuff at this particular instance, because it will help us to solve a lot of functional problems, like understand, for instance, when we're talking about the gesture, a lot of artists are speaking about the gesture, and this is basically the line of action of some sorts. So we could explain the line of action with the behavior of the... I forgot the name. Come on, man. The spine, seriously, or the backbone. So basically, we're going to use the spine as our gesture point. So next time that we wanna create a kind of certain dynamic figure for the human form, we're going to use the spine as basically driving force. This is something that I will try to do at least, and then knowing where the connections of the spine will happen, we will start to add other simplistic skeleton parts that we will simplify. So yeah, let's just go. Hopefully we'll get somewhere today. I also am going to use reference that I'm not sure if I'm actually able to share or not. Like I shared it on my Discord, so I could share a link. Yes, let me share a link. I will share a link here, but I can't probably show it during the stream. There might be some issues. So this is the link that I'm basically using right now. This is the 3D anatomy source that I'm going to use. So basically what I did is I used this site to basically reduce this model that you might see to only skeleton, and I'm going to analyze each part of the skeleton from there to basically find a way to simplify it the best way that is clear for me. So for instance, when we talk about the pelvis, the pelvic area is one of the most complex areas, and what I created here, I kind of liked it because like this part is actually pretty close to what the pelvic bone actually looks like. The side from the back, like this part, it's pretty similar too. This thing I created specifically to indicate the area of the abdominal muscles that we're going to create later here. So basically, like, there is a potential to create an abdominal muscles in here. So because of this, like, I will try to kind of create it as simple as possible, but at the same time try to keep some similarities to resolve the anatomy issues later. So I still don't know how exactly I will establish those connections from the side. This is something we will figure out from different angles probably. Basically we'll see. Because again, the pelvic bone is the one of the most complex ones to simplify, and we definitely need to basically go through a lot of iterations before we will end up with the final look of it. So yeah, let's just go. Also with the head, I'm still kind of working with the head. What I want to do with the simplification of the head, I want to simplify it kind of closer to the, I don't know, probably to the face itself, but I don't know. Maybe we need to take just the skeleton here, or the skull, and kind of find a way to simplify a skull too. But again, skull is kind of a complex stuff though. It's not going to be an easy one to simplify. Because the whole point of simplification of this is to make sure that it's going to be realizable from every angle. So for instance, I want to take this method and utilize it, basically recreate these primitives of similar primitives from all possible angles. This is the idea. So go. Again. So we have cylinders here, cylinder here. We need to come up with something that basically works with the double cylinder here. It's probably going to work as a regular cylinder that connects, and then it basically kind of connects here. So for now there's going to be a lot of experimentation. So nothing's set in stone what I'm doing. So try to experiment with me if you want to, because these experiments are definitely going to push our spatial awareness to the next level, even if we're not going to use everything in the way that it is. So it's still here to help us to grow. So I'm going to use a little bit different setup. So okay, so let's see. Also, lag is going to be kind of a pretty hard part to figure out. I mean, we're going to draw it from multiple angles in order to figure out how exactly to approach it the best. But what I'm thinking at this particular instance, it's something like this. So it's basically a half cylindrical form. That kind of starts cylindrical, and the closer it gets to the fingers, the more flat it becomes. Maybe we'll find a better way to do that. So it's still questionable how to solve this part. Still not sure. I guess this is something that we need to figure out along the way. Yeah, we definitely need to kind of imagine how it looks from the other side too. And then we definitely need to figure out how to work with the fingers. Like how to best simplify them. Yeah, this is something that we'll basically figure out throughout the way, these tests. And the main idea is to make it easy to realize. Again, if you have a basic knowledge of primitives, ideally you should be able to work with it. It's not that hard to do that. You just basically need to analyze an anatomical form a lot, like just either drawing over it or whatever was basically fits best for you. So again, this is still a questionable. I will try to find a better way to present it. It still kind of seems a lot. We need to make things a little bit more simplified. But again, and what I mean by simplified is, again, to make it closer to something like this. Again, we have one portion of the cylinder, another portion of a modified cylinder, another cylinder, double cylinder here, and the rest is just the intersections. We need to make something similar to here, and I kind of could view this one as a cylinder. Like we have one cylinder here, we have another cylinder here. So, I don't know. I believe it definitely needs to be a little bit bigger here. So, either way, let's just continue and see where it's going to lead us. The things... it works? Yes, it works. So, one of the main things that we need to properly establish right from the get-go is the spinal cord. So the spine is the most important things in here because it's going to create the main gesture for our pose, regardless of the pose that we're working with. So this is something that we need to learn how to reverse engineer properly. And of course, when we talk about the spine, I already talked about the spine. Spine is just nothing but a wired cylinder. So again, it's pretty easy to recreate the spine. Just imagine it as a wire that basically uses a cylinder. Wired cylinder, wired cylinder. So as simple as that. This is going to be our spine. It's not going to be that easy though, but in most cases it kind of will be that easy. So it's just basically creating cylindrical transitions. We're not going to count each vertebrae. Although ideally we probably should, but again, it's not going to be a simple one then. Then it starts to become a little bit more complex than we would want to. Okay, so I kind of like how pelvis looks here. So I definitely don't want to draw each time this complex of a pelvis, because again, most of these things are unnecessary. So because of this, it's pretty easy to find a way to simplify it to something like this. So we're going to keep the important parts here, and the rest we're going to discard. So this is exactly what we will try to do. So one of the most important parts that will help us to connect pelvis to our spine is this part. It's basically a butterfly-like part of the spine. So let's just find it in reference and try to find a way to draw it as simple as possible. Oh no. Schnapps. Sorry about that. Ugh. That was a good sneeze. Ugh. Okay, so ideally it needs to, from the side it needs to look like this. So it's going to be a look from the side, but from the front it's going to be a little bit bigger. Let's just try to come up how it's going to look from 3/4 view now. So I will try to imagine it as a plane first. Then we're going to turn this plane into a probably into a cylinder, maybe not cylindrical shape. It's probably the best. So this is where vertebrae is going to connect, or where the spine is going to connect. So we need to make sure that this is going to be clear. Okay, and the rest is just putting pieces together. Something like this, and of course it's going to have a things to the sides. Need to figure out how they're going to look. Ideally it's going to be kind of like a butterfly separated by this thing, so like a wing shapes, which could overcomplicate things. Hopefully it's not. Okay, so It's I still believe that it looks too complex. We need to find a way to simplify it a little bit more. And then there was a question how exactly maybe it's better to actually look at this as a cylinder. I don't know. Trying to make it cylinder now. Again, I will try not to overcomplicate things here. So imagining like we have a cylinder here. Basically connects to this part. It's not necessarily a good one though. There's going to be a lot of complex transitions here. And how to explain those transitions. Okay, we'll continue to try. Maybe we will find a solution here. Skibbity-ba-boom. Okay. Okay, let's just focus on a this thing probably is going to be much bigger. And I doubt that we're going to look at it, like, we're barely going to notice a ellipse here. We're also barely going to see the clavicle. Hopefully this is a clavicle and this is a scapular. Hopefully I'm not mixing things up. Let's check this thing out. Clavicle and scapula. Yep. Let's save and proceed. Okay, let's look at the areas of the, yeah, kind of looks a little bit cylindrical from both sides and a little bit like cube-like from here. So maybe there is a way to simplify it like this, so let's think. Okay, let's try to do it here. So this area in most cases is flat in chest bones where the ribs are. So in most cases I believe it's flat. And basically has this kind of a thing and from this area basically becomes a little bit more. We could actually use straight lines here too. Again, this is just a suggestion. It's not 100% probably accurate, but still. I want to try everything, so it might work, it might not. The main idea is to try to simplify it. So this part we're going to imagine like a cylinder, and it's truly going to be like a cylinder. You can't oversimplify clavicles. They always going to look almost kind of the same. You just have to learn how to draw them, because it's just a wired cylinder. You need to properly draw wired clavicle. I mean, like, imagine like clavicle looks like this from the top view, and then it's basically a wired cylinder. Yeah, something like this. So yeah, this is our clavicle. Yeah, kind of messed this thing up a little bit. It's going to be a little bit straighter here, and then it will start to bend. So it's a little bit straight here. Then it will start to bend. Maybe it's better to imagine it in 3 parts. So like you have one part, this is a straight part, then you have one slightly tilted, and then another one that's tilted. So it basically goes something like this. I don't believe that parts are going to be in equal ones. I mean, the straight part probably is going to be the biggest one, so it's going to be straight up to this point. So in terms of proportions, I believe. So this part is going to be the biggest one. Then this part, let's see, maybe not. The problem with the clavicle is, like, it's kind of individual. I mean, depending on the person, it will slightly change. So it's probably better not to set any proportions. Guess we need to create a clavicle close to a human character. Okay, so yeah, this part is going to be closer to here. So cylindrical shape will be here again. Spine is going to be somewhere here. Hopefully this is a proper indication of the spine. It's not 100% accurate, but hopefully by practicing a lot with reverse engineering the human body, that way, like, there's going to be a point when we'll 100% will be sure where exactly the spine is going to be located within given pose, because this is not an easy one, and we kind of need to understand them to properly indicate where this cylinder starts from the front and where it basically ends from the back. Again, same thing here. Cylinder starts from the back, stops from the front. Yeah, in most cases this area actually looks like a straight area. So the chest usually it's almost flat. And this flat area, it actually becomes a little bit flatter. No, it's right. It's fine. It's like a tie. The top part of the cylinder, which will connect to the backbone. It's probably not 100% accurate, but hopefully it will work though. Again, just trying to find a way to simplify this the best way that is logical for me. You'll find your own way to simplify things. It's better to actually find your own way. I mean, the whole point of this is to find your personal kind of way of dealing with those shapes. So, and now ideally knowing where the separation happens. So this part is going to be relatively straight too. It's going to be a little bit tilted here, but then it will go in a straight line here. Some sort of. So this is going to be the place for the cylindrical shape. Like imagine like those are ribs. Which they are not. I mean, this is just a form line representation. These are not the ribs. Of course, the ribs are not going to look like this. They're probably going to look a little bit different though. My goal is not to draw perfect ribs, it's just to basically find a way to simplify things. It seems like it's too much though. Okay, let's just try to recreate this pelvic area on the other model. This model has a little bit more wider hips, so I will try to use this, basically try to recreate it from the, from here. So, first thing that we need to set here is this area. This is almost always going to be the same. This is actually quite a complex form though. It's not going to be easy to recreate it from all angles. But it still would be a good thing to simplify it to a certain extent, to look a little bit more simpler than the actual pelvic bone. Because the actual pelvic bone is freaking kind of too much. That's just too much. Okay, this thing is going to be on the back, in the back, which means that this part is going to be smaller and lower. Then we're going to have our supposed cylinder from here. I will try to use it as a cylinder, though it's still questionable. Do we need to look at it as a cylinder or not? But again, I have to try. Then the cylinder has to connect. So this is the area. I probably choose the wrong position. Yeah, it seems like it has to be much higher somewhere in here. So let's just redraw it a little bit. Yeah, it has to be a little bit more tilted. So this thing will go under and it will connect to this part of this in the center. We'll get there. Okay. It's so weird, like the fact that I'm not talking about anything. I mean, usually I'm talking about at least something during the drawing, but I'm kind of focused on solving this problem, and it takes a lot, so... Okay, let's try to imagine the cylinder here. So it's going to be easy to connect this part to the cylinder. This is something that we need to do, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that big though. Yeah, it seems too big. I'll just make it smaller. Move these cylinders a little bit closer. And this is the part where this one will connect. Yeah, this is not going to be an easy form to recreate, but at least we can try. Again, the more we will do this, the better we will draw it, I guess. So it's all about repetition at this particular point. But one thing that I need to come up with is with the solid shape that I will learn how to explain without reference. So for instance, like first couple of dozen tries, I will reference this, how it looks, but at some point I will analyze it so well from multiple angles and from multiple directions that it's going to be just enough for me to picture it and draw it from multiple angles. So sometimes it's not going to be easy. In some angles it's definitely going to be tricky, but at least it's going to be a somewhat controlled way to do this. Because the other way is not having any solutions, or having unreliable solutions that you can't reproduce from multiple angles, that you can just draw from 1, 2, maybe maximum, but maybe 3. You know, one of the reasons why I'm doing this, I don't want to limit myself to just learning certain set of poses and that's it. I want to be able to solve all these problems using one like specific method. And I truly believe that every artist has to have their own methodology figured out. And sometimes it takes time, especially if you don't have necessarily an intention to figure out your own personal methodology. Like, this is my purpose, and because of this, I'm a little bit more direct towards realizing this goal. But it's completely fine if you don't have this goal, like to find your own. Yeah, I also kind of created a one misrepresentation. Yeah, this one needs to be higher, much higher, somewhere in here. So this is my personal goal, to create a certain method of doing this. And if you don't have this, at some point you will find this automatically. Because the more you draw, the more you will start to notice certain patterns of problem solving. And at some point, it just will come easy. Because of a lot of repetitions and etc. But this is just not personally what works for me, so because of this I'm trying to come up with my own method of doing this. Even if I'm not going to find that much that I would want to, I still will be able to practice a lot and learn a lot of stuff, which will add to the experience. So nothing to lose, I guess. Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to recreate it though. I wish it would be a little bit easier. But again, there's so many like translations in here and transitions that it's just hard to properly recreate it. Yeah, it's not easy. But at least we have a connection of the front to the back, and we have sides, so it's already kind of almost established. The rest is just trying to figure out the transitional areas. So how exactly we need to create this thing. Do we need to create a cylinder, or we need to use something better to solve this problem? Maybe we don't need to create any cylinders at all, and just come up with one big shape. This is the purpose of experimentation, I guess. We will experiment until we will find the best solution. So I kind of like the idea to making this one similar to this cylinder, but it's a little bit more cubic. It will definitely set the boundaries for this part. Yeah. Then it goes inside though. Just yeah, needs to be less up here. fun one. Yeah, something like this. But again, it's like I'm again over adding too much of a complexity. Where is the balance? Where is the balance? Yeah, it's going to... Maybe we don't need to create this thing that big. We could actually make it like this. Make it small from the sides. It's going to create a little bit more, like, just better transitions. We'll create kind of small cylindrical shape here that will basically disappear. So it kind of will start cylindrical, but then towards this it's just basically will disappear and will continue into one thing. Okay, this kind of works. Cool, cool, cool. Again, this is kind of like working with modifying primitives, so again, let's just try to imagine how it works. So, okay. I have a base. We have things to the sides to which the back parts will connect. From the side they will connect in a straight line. From here there's going to be a slight difference. Again, it will start a little bit more cylindrical, but towards this area it will basically lose. All transitions will become just a straight line. So I guess this is kind of the way that we will try to solve this one. Now, of course, we have a vertebrae to connect. Okay, let's save. Again, slowly but surely I will figure out all these pieces, but at this point, and of course this thing of course has some type of thickness to it. It's not just like straight line. Definitely has thickness to it. We're not going to use this thickness every time that we're going to draw it, because then the purpose of simplification is just going to die. But we'll still need to understand how exactly it translates. Oh, it actually will explain this thing too, where it connects, which is pretty cool. This is the inner part, but that we're not going to necessarily see. It kind of is going to be inside. Funny thing is, before that, I wasn't able to do this without help of 3D at all. I mean, I was lacking confidence so much that I wasn't be able to use this, just to draw it from the imagination. Like, I mean, I needed to use 3D software to solve this problem. So I came a long way since that time, so. And it's all thanks to understanding the basic primitives. I mean, if it wasn't for primitives and practice of those primitives and understanding perspective and etc., I wouldn't get there probably. Because again, these are the fundamentals that you have to know. And if you know these fundamentals, you will be able to realize this thing too. Step by step. So, yeah. So, I kind of like how it looks. I mean, of course we will probably change its shape slightly. I mean, we're not going to 100% draw it each time the same way. So sometimes these things are going to be a little bit more kind of concave or convex, whatever. So it all will depend. But I guess the base is here. So now at least we will know how to connect the thoracic area. Hopefully it goes that way. To the back. And yeah, that will go into the completely different direction. I kind of don't like the chest area with the simplified version of it, so kind of don't like it. We need to find a way to make it better. Like the idea to make it I don't know, flat in this area kind of was fine. We need to find a better way to indicate that flatness, maybe with these lines. But yeah, it's kind of almost the same as drawing ribs. These are not the ribs, but still could be a good idea to know how snap, how the cylindrical shape actually works. Cylinders. Maybe we need to test it a couple of times separately and see how it could work. Okay, let's just find a empty space here and try to draw it from imagination now. Actually, kind of already tried to do that though, probably, or not. Don't remember. Probably didn't. So I'm going to assume that this area is flat, although it has a little bit curvature to it, slight curvature. In most cases, we're going to perceive it as flat. Okay, so, and it's not going to be that big though. So these things are going to be connectors for our rib. On top of it, going to have clavicles. Yeah, we'll kind of need to figure out the actual form, how it looks like. So let's just assume that these are the clavicles. Okay, so I could assume that this part is flat too, because it kind of is relatively flat. So this is the place where ribs will start to go in a little bit different direction. We could actually kind of set the direction with the planes. Why not? It kind of could mislead in terms of the fact that these are not actually flat ones. I mean, they are flat, but imagine like those are the ribs. So, and then the ribs will just basically go across. They will connect like in our cylindrical form. So this is going to be a one cylinder here. Going to be a back. Bad example of the backbone though. Spine. And then it will start to go in a different direction. So again, direction is here. It goes there. Then it changes. Goes there. Just imagine our wired cylinder here. Oh snap, my leg. I'm not feeling it. Okay. Definitely need to imagine some thickness to it. Someone is followed. Mrairog, thanks for the following. Very much appreciated. И если вы русскоязычный, и, собственно, человечек, то спасибо за фоллоу, очень признателен. Сегодня у нас английский стримчик, поэтому мы на английском шпилим. Кривовато, но тем не менее. Getting back to English now. Okay, it's not easy though. Again, when you're focused, it's pretty hard to talk. Like, I can't talk that much. And this is something, by the way, that I want to learn how to do. learn how to speak while painting and drawing. But again, it comes with experience. First, you need to kind of know how to control your process first, and then you will know how to do the rest. So again, I'm imagining those as kind of partial cylinders. So like I'm truly picturing this area as a cylindrical one. So this is going to be kind of a straight one. So it's a surface, or at least I will try to imagine it as a flat surface. For now, I don't know. We'll see. Where do we go? So from here, we have a continuation of the cylinder, but it's not necessarily kind of cylindrical. I mean, like the cylinder kind of changes the direction slightly, and then we'll connect it as a regular cylinder. So imagining this line as a straight line, and then the cylinder here. Yeah, I know that it's not going to be easy to simplify on organic shapes and forms. It's something that I was prepared for. To struggle. I mean, if things are hard, it's good. This thing, it ain't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be hard, which makes it fun. So yeah, I will try to simplify the ribcage area that way. So it kind of works. I mean, we need to draw it from multiple angles and a lot in order to truly learn how to draw it properly, but this simplification kind of seems at least understandable, because every part that we will draw here we will explain with simple primitives. So it's not something that we're not aware of in terms of the forms. Like if you know how to draw simple primitives, you will learn how to draw this. Yes, this is slightly modified, but the whole idea is to find a way to do that and keeping this element of simplification intact. So yeah, definitely going to picture this area as a flat area. These things will indicate the direction of the ribs, just as a reference point. So we're going to imagine this part, it's not necessarily going to be a cylindrical one. We're going to imagine it like a plane with the form. This thing is going to be it's going to have some thickness too. Okay. Yeah, the hardest part is to repeat that in every freaking drawing that we're going to do. It's just like, ugh. And it takes time to do that, but at least it's the quicker process. So, okay, scapulars now. Let's just move on to the scapula. Scapula is the tricky one, because It's pretty complex form too. So we need to find a way to simplify scapula. We already have the information about simplification of the scapula somewhere. So I kind of tried to simplify them here, but in most cases we're going to work something like this. So again, we will picture scapula as the regular plane first. Inside of the cube, part of the cube. Then we're going to create the silhouette of the scapula. And based on this silhouette, we'll basically create the shape itself, or the scapula itself. So now it's all about trying to find the best way to simplify it. Let's just use this one to try to do that. So scapula. So one of the important parts of the scapula is, oh, clavicle, not scapula. Clavicle. No, scapula. Scapula. Sometimes I'm going to mix them up, so if I'm talking about clavicle but drawing scapula, just whatever. I mean scapula, not the clavicle. Sometimes I'm mixing those up. So basically it's going to look somewhat like this, or at least I will try to picture it that way. It's a little bit kind of tricky here in terms of the shape. Also, scapula has this weird extension. You could simplify this one as a cylindrical shape. This is the socket where the joint is going to connect, so it's pretty important. This thing restricts the movement up, and basically at some point the movement will start to pull scapula with the hand. Like if you will try to lift up your hand, once you will reach this area, now this one starts to move too. In terms of the movements, scapular is one of the most kind of hardly predicted ones. I mean, the way that it moves, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it could go there. It could go there. So it could change its position, and it basically kind of goes around the rib cage. Kind of shifts. So because of this, it's going to be a pretty hard one to simplify properly. Yeah, this area is going to be kind of a complex one to properly create. It's definitely not going to be straight. I already don't like that, so just try to find the best way to do that though. So this part we will just imagine as a plane that basically connects it to the scapula itself. Basically starts separately and then basically connects to the scapular. So this is one that's going to be an easy one. when I previously drew scapula, I usually disregarded this part because I rarely see its importance. So this kind of element, but it's kind of important. It wouldn't be a good idea to throw it just because you don't understand why it's there. It might solve certain problems once we'll start to work with muscles and the overall human form. So I will imagine this line as a continuous one, but basically there is a thing on top of it. Just imagine that it connects to this part, kind of fuses it together. And again, the main thing for this is to learn how to draw it from multiple angles, and it's not going to be an easy one to kind of find a way to do that. Also, this one is going to be quite smaller. I created there a cylinder to which we connect, or the sphere that we connect cylinder to. But maybe I need to rethink this. So let's see, because it kind of looks like it, but it's not necessarily this like the same. No, we could use it as a sphere. But just make connections slightly off, maybe. So it's not going to be right like in the middle. So maybe this type of sphere connection could be better. So it's not going to connect right away here. So part of the sphere is going to be free from this connection. The same here. Yep, kind of like that. Okay, so yeah, it's still not like 100% easy way to create a scapula though. I would definitely find a little bit simpler way to do that. So let's just save now. Yeah, stream kind of super quick. So since it's pretty repetitive process, this discovery process, I'm going to end stream in 30 minutes, so I'm not going to extend it unless someone is going to drop by. So or stop by, or how to properly say it, whatever. So again, this is a pretty long process of trial and error, basically trying to find a way to properly simplify it. So this was my first kind of attempt of simplifying it, and from there we got to something a little bit like better that could be explained a little bit better. Although of course we could simplify it like as simple as possible just by like simplifying it to the regular cylinder, but we're going to lose dynamic, and this is the problem. We need to find a solution to basically keep dynamic intact and like make it organic, but at the same time maintain the explainability of the basic primitives. hopefully I'm just like explain it clear. So again, what I mean is, yes, we need to simplify them to irregular primitives, but if we're going to keep them as regular primitives, just as regular primitives, they're going to look bad. They're not going to look organic. So in order to make them more organic, to give them this organic look, I'm integrating those kind of modifications. So there is a reason why, instead of just picturing one big cylinder here, I decided to separate it into two cylinders. Like imagine like we have one cylinder here, one kind of cylinder here, and this cylinder basically connects there. So it's definitely kind of a modified cylinder. Also another cylinder here, and also another cylinder here, and again they are connect some way too. Also we have something in between, which is a kind of a plane with slight modifications in direction. So again, there's a lot of complexity to it, but at the same time, it could be explained simplistic, in simple way. One of the reasons why I'm spending time doing this is to, again, I already talked about it, but let's just talk about it another time, or whatever. Yeah, my English today is kind of weird, I don't know why. Maybe I'm just kind of focused on drawing it because of this. I probably could barely speak my own language today by doing this, and like speaking a foreign language, it's even harder. So this is the rib. Ribs are usually not cylindrical, although to simplify it we could picture them as cylindrical ones, but they're usually don't have a cylindrical, like they're kind of, I don't know, they have a kind of a flat shape, but somewhat cylindrical, I don't know, somewhat curved a little bit. But it's not a cylinder though. So yeah, I will continue to repeat this process even after the stream. Probably not today though. I mean, like outside of the stream, I mean. Until I will get somewhere. So since this is kind of super important part, I'm going to try to work on it outside of the stream as much as possible. Because during the streams there's just too much repetitiveness. I mean, it's not the same when we try to simplify something that was actually simple. When it comes down to simplifying something that is super complex, it usually takes time, especially if you don't have experience and you're trying to come up with the ways to simplify it. So, and a funny thing is though, all these simplifications that we will do, we will utilize in animals too. In other species, because almost every species has or have a lot of repetitive kind of, like we have similar bone structure. Like almost all creatures have a clavicles and scapulars of some kind. They are kind of a little bit different, but they still could be created from the same primitives. And even though like we're working with the human form only now, it will be applied to human, from the human to, well, translate from the human to and animals too. Humans are animals though, but still, I mean, you get what I mean, hopefully. So yeah, this area, it's something that it's kind of tricky because of these lines, but in reality, these are the straight lines. I mean, we're imagining them as straight, and these tilted lines are just an indication of the rib direction to know where the cylinder starts. Of course, we could get rid of them though, but it could be a good idea to actually know the direction for the ribs, because probably one of the biggest misconceptions about the ribs is the fact that they start like this, down, and go there. But some people are throwing them like just purely straight, like they're just basically going from here. But it's a little bit more complicated than that though. Unless we will need to draw the actual rib cage, we're going to use this method, which for the simplification purposes kind of works. Of course, we need to try it more, but you can learn how to utilize this method like multiple times, and at some point it will just become a second nature, and you will repeat constantly. One of the reasons why it's important to create those tilts is probably to know where exactly those lines will be created. When the actual cylindrical shape will start. It kind of seems too big of a ribcage, but still. We don't think about proportions here. The main idea is just basically learn how to replicate it. Skibbity ba-boom. Ugh. Kinda wanna sleep already. I don't know. Didn't sleep well. 04. So yeah, we have about like 30 minutes till the end of the session. Let's just proceed. So again, this connection is going to be quite cylindrical, because this is the exact place where it starts to connect as a cylinder. It's probably going to be quite smaller here. I believe ribcage from the side view actually maintains this kind of downward transition, so it goes like this. And we need to make sure that from every angle it's going to be clear. Just create an indication for it. And again, it's not a straight line necessarily. Let's just kind of exaggerate it a little bit to show how exactly it needs to be tilted. It might be unnecessary though, but I just want to overstress this. Like we have this 100%. I also could make this part smaller too. And again, we're not trying to draw ribs, we're trying to indicate the cylinder form line, or cylindrical form line. If we would need to render this, for instance, we need to understand its form. And ideally it could be a good idea to understand its form regardless of the fact, like, are we going to render it or not? It's a good way to practice. Understanding the form. So yeah, kinda like this. So I guess we're finished with the rib cage for now. The hardest part is clavicles, or the scapulars. A scapular for me, or a clavicle. Oh, come on, man. Seriously? Scapula. Lopatka. So one thing about the scapular is the fact that it's not easy to draw them properly because of the rib cage. The smaller we will make a rib cage, yeah, I probably made quite a big mistakes. I made a rib cage too small here. We need to make it bigger because we don't have enough place for scapulars to move. So because of this, rib cage is actually quite big here. So this is not necessarily a cylindrical shape, it's more like a but it's kind of only from the back. From the side it kind of stays consistent. Oh, things are lagging though? Things are not supposed to lag. I noticed that previous stream was lagging a lot. I mean, lags were pretty small. I mean, I guess recording was fine, but on the stream we had like major problems. So let's just try to replicate it here. So it could be a good idea to actually draw it from the side or from the front view and break down its shape. Clavicle. Yeah, it kind of seems too big though. We could make it smaller. It's not that big of a deal. Again, I want to try to simplify this as like, I don't want to overcomplicate silhouette, which I will. Unfortunately, I can't help it. This is just the way that it works. Too many more. We need to indicate more straight lines here. Yeah, we could keep that one as a curved one. So probably we'll have only two curves. One that basically connects to the joint, that's basically a socket. One is here. It still seems too big. Still seems too big. Like it needs to be super small. And then knowing where is the plane, we'll be able to recreate it hopefully. Yeah, this part probably is supposed to be smaller. There's no point of making it too big. So again, the same thing here. So it goes there. Again, this line is not going to be straight because of the overall curvature of the plane. So we kind of need to adapt it to the curvature of the plane. But kind of imagine it's straight. Okay, now we're going to have the only curvature from this part. Usually I don't like this type of a simplification. And what I mean by this type of a simplification is I don't like simplifying things to the shapes necessarily. I mean, it could be good to understand not the shape wise, but actually a form wise. But shape, sometimes it's a part of the form, like the silhouette usually is important in some cases, in most cases, in the end, of course. But again, since this is a studying purpose, I kind of don't want to rely on shapes too much. Although I will admit probably that without them, without the shapes, we're not going to be able to recreate most of the stuff that we would want to recreate. So you can't disregard their importance. Yeah, it's still pretty hard to grasp the actual look for the scapula though. It seems still looks unnatural. I guess we just need to practice it a lot to make it right. And this is the problem of organic. Like, organic hybrids are organic hybrids for a reason. They're pretty hard to recreate properly. I guess we'll try to do that multiple times, and at some point we'll get it right. But I still would want to simplify it more. I mean, I don't like how kind of overcomplicated it looks. It needs to be somewhat even more simplified than this. Like, we have this, but again, if we're going to simplify it too much, we're going to lose the whole form of it, and it's not going to look like scapular anymore. So, and this is the part where I guess you have to find compromises. You can simplify it to a regular cube. No matter how you want to. It just has its own complexity to it. Like, how the heck you can simplify that? Not much of a ways to simplify it. This part of the basically socket, you're not going to be able to simplify it that much. I mean, this is kind of a cylindrical shape, but or elliptical shape. It could be viewed as a part of the cylinder, but still. In terms of this part, I guess in men I will draw it straight, and in woman mannequinization I will draw it a little bit more curved. I will try to use, as I said previously, that I will try to create a kind of I don't want to say like gender specific mannequins, but it could be a good idea to actually make this, because for instance, if I will need to draw a certain sketch and I know that my character is a woman, I need to make sure that I will represent this all woman qualities in this skeleton base that I'm going to draw. And the way to do it is to make certain elements of the skeleton a little bit more woman-like. So basically add a little bit more curvature to it and less angles. So for instance, we could make a rib cage look a little bit more curvature, like the added curvature to this part, so add curvature to this part, not to make it super pointy. But with mannequin, we probably could actually use this pointiness to our advantage to make those hard transitions. And this is something that we need to keep in mind, I believe, or at least I have to keep in mind. So yeah, this thing definitely wouldn't work. I mean, it's just too crazy. We could actually recreate it now based on the new thing. Gonna to make it a little bit right. And this is probably going to be the last thing that we're going to do for today. So I will try to recreate this back part that we created here. It probably has to connect somewhere closer. Again, this is the thickness, the top plane. It's almost like a ribbon that we're drawing now, but not necessarily a ribbon though. But it looks like it. Okay, it actually has a little bit different form here. Yeah, it kinda has something like this and then like this. And then it goes down. Simplifying. Yeah, we're not going to draw it like how it looks exactly. This is something that I will draw separately. So yeah, and of course it's going to be mirrored from the other side too. Oh snap! I don't remember when the last time I saved, so I probably should save as fast as possible now. I could miss some stuff. Of course, then it's going to connect here. Okay, let's save. Waiting for saving. Waiting for the time to press merge layers. Then let's just... I guess we could make it smaller. So it still looks like a pelvic bone, but it's a little bit more simplified and a little bit more explained. I mean, hopefully it will... Again, it still has a heart shape to it. I mean, if you will basically... It's basically like a heart, if we're going to work with symbols. So it's just like modified. So yeah, and the last thing we're going to do is just going to draw it from the back now, because it's definitely going to... We need to understand how it created from the back. So this part here is definitely going to be relatively big, so it kind of becomes pretty big. I need to find exact place for these connections. I'm just trying right now. I definitely don't have enough on the floor. So yeah, we're not going to see how exactly it's going to connect there. It's kind of will be partially invisible for us because it's tilted, but we still will be able to recreate it though. This is where we'll understand how it looks. I love these type of simplifications. I mean, it's not necessarily 100% simple, but it's kind of simplified to a certain degree. And it could motivate a person that doesn't understand why we need to learn primitives to basically start to learn primitives by understanding their importance. Because if I wouldn't understand primitives and if I didn't know how to work with them, I wouldn't be able to create this. So again, all methods that we talked about here, understanding the type of subjects, category of solid and soft, understanding the primitives, knowing how to work with primitives or with planes, like know how to draw basic cubes, cylinders, and spheres. In order to draw properly all primitives, we need to understand the base is the planes, ellipses, and how to create ellipses inside of the planes or planes based on the ellipses, given ellipse. So, and using this information, we'll be able to know how to work with primitives. Then we're basically adding a silhouette or shape, understanding of form lines, basically peaks and valleys. Then we, of course, understand positioning, perspective. Then we will start to apply methods, which is again wired cylinder, which is like if we know the regular cylinder, we'll know how to work with wired cylinder. Ribbon effect kind of applied to both of them, and of course versions of, oh snap, my ear is freaking killing me. So and of course like the closed open ribbon effect and wired cylinders, we already talked about that one. And of course then we will go into them a little bit more complex modifications, and this is exactly what I did. I mean, understanding what I'm working with soft, understanding the primitives, planes, and lots of stuff like silhouette, shape, form line, understanding the positioning. Again, I am applying the knowledge of perspective here. I'm not like constructing it, but I'm imagining it. I'm applying methods, a lot of them. So wired cylinders, we look at like seeing them almost every time that we're working, even with the organic here. And modifications, this is something that I'm doing, is basically limited operations and extended operations. Again, here they are. So these are the regular understanding and limited operations by just moving separate edges, points, and whatever. We already talked about it multiple times. Boolean operations, so as extended operations using their parts, adding, removing, planes, edges, and points, so as performing Boolean operations of uniting, subtracting, and intersecting. So within or between those primitives. And this is exactly what I'm doing with this. I mean, like, how I achieve this is basically using all those methodologies and all these methods. So again, we could look at this one as a ribbon, we could look at this one as one big cylinder that basically has a little bit like different shape to it, and the more experienced you are, the quicker you will be able to perform all these Boolean operations inside of your brain. But it could be a good idea to imagine all of them as one big primitive first, of course, and then break it down to something kind of semi-complex like this. It still considers a simplified thing, because again, we have a cylinder here, we have kind of combination of unification of the cylinder here, where it basically goes here, and then it basically stops being a cylinder and starts to behave like a regular plane. So again, regular plane, combination with the cylinder. So first it starts like a plane, and then the higher it goes, the more cylindrical it becomes. So again, these are the modifications that I'm talking about. And most of the artists start performing those operations inside of their brains. They're rarely just like actually creating those Boolean operations using certain methods. But again, you have to learn it somehow. Of course, it's going to shift center. So yeah, this is the way to, not like how I created this. And this is a little bit more complex, of course. This part is a little bit more complex. Like, to explain it, I don't know. So I definitely use some type of a Boolean operations of subtracting here. Definitely subtraction here, definitely subtraction here. The overall shape is just basically, if we're going to look at it from the top, I don't know, it's probably closer to a cylinder that basically got modified somehow. But in most cases, yeah, I guess from the top it's actually going to look like a cylinder. Although I doubt that the actual pellet carrier is going to look like a cylinder. But again, we could simplify it to regular cylinder from the top and then just basically just break it down to something like this. So I'm trying to draw from the top now. Or at least imagine how it looks from the top. I guess it still has the same thing here. Although I doubt that it's completely cylindrical though. I mean, this part's probably going to be a little bit more like this maybe. So there's going to be probably, yeah, it's probably going to be small, slightly smaller. The same goes for the rib cage. Look at rib cage from the top. Imagine it like a certain like primitive, and then just basically just simplify it. Then it will connect here. And there you have it. Doesn't have all parts though. Probably going to be partially seeing some of those areas. So this is our top, this is our front. So hopefully this one will stick out because I actually like how it looks. I mean, it's not that hard to draw. Of course, from like it's definitely will take time to. I forgot the language completely today. It definitely will take time to learn how to do it, or get like to adjust to it, to actually draw it from multiple angles properly. So I probably need to go through a lot of tests and learn how to draw it from multiple angles, and certain angles will definitely be a struggle, but the overall understanding, like, it's actually will help us to solve this. So again, this part in most cases, again, is just going to start as a cylinder there. Then again, what we're doing right now is just basically dealing with the invisible part. We're not going to see. So the only thing that is visible to us is this. So then we have this type of and then it probably could make it smaller though. I don't know about this part. Like, this is something that I will probably change. I mean, I'm talking about this. Like, this cut, I don't know if we actually need this. This is something that I need to basically look at the anatomy, revisit it on multiple occasions, and actually come up with some type of explanation for it. Because we might not need it at all. This is something that we might just basically simplify to the point of getting rid of it. But like, I don't know. Maybe we'll end up with something like this, and this is it. So just this type of connection, and it's, of course, it's going to be much easier. So this is something to keep in mind, like as variant. Like, we're not having any type of transitions here, just this. That's it. So this is might be the much more simpler version, but this is something that I definitely need to kind of check and try and see if it actually makes sense. Because, like, the shape wise, of course, I like this one more because it creates a little bit more interesting silhouette. But, like, why would we need to create a good silhouette for this? I mean, this is just a way to simplify things that we're going to cover with the muscles and etc. So it's not necessarily could be potentially helpful. But if it will be helpful, for instance, once we will start to add anatomy, we might use those parts to explain some anatomy connections, maybe. I don't know. This is something that we need to think about. Because we might explain with those things some anatomy connections. This is something that I need to basically analyze separately from the stream and find a good solution for it, hopefully. So yeah, let's just finish that one, and on that note we'll end up the session. So again, kinda creating those weird things which we probably don't need. Yeah, it kind of looks messy in here because you don't necessarily understand where exactly the front and where the back, because yeah, you need to adjust the pressure and make things that are closer to us a little bit darker. And the rest of the buttocks we're going to kind of approach as a simplified, for instance, probably spheres in here, or we're just going to use in actual muscles here. So this is something that, again, we'll find on the later stages. So at this point, in terms of the simplification, we're probably going to use, as I join here, just regular spheres that are going to be inside, because this area is empty for us. I mean, we need to fill it with something, and we're basically going to fill it with these things, and then it's going to give us the proper form that we need, ideally. The same goes here. It's all about properly understanding the sizes of those spheres to best fit our character, or so yeah. I guess that's kind of it. I mean, good thing is that it's moving somewhere, which is a good thing. Again, it's slow progression, because when you're trying to come up with your own methods, it usually takes time. This is not something that you just basically, it's not the same as just basically open a book and read from it and basically take the information from it. It's a little bit harder because you need to go through a lot of tests. You need to, like, and for instance, at this point, I'm feeling confident that this is something that I will probably draw, and it seems like a good idea. But once I will try it with multiple kind of, for instance, once I will try to use it in male poses, it might not work, and we need to come up with something else. So again, this is something that we will adjust, but at least it's a good practice regardless of the results. Even if we're not going to use the exact look for it, it's still a good practice. It's still a good test, and it still basically gives us the experience needed. And again, we get from this, which is pretty bad looking thing, to this, which is a little bit more explainable in terms of how it could be created as a basic primitive. So, and I'm fine with that. I mean, you're never going to start right away with the proper look. Again, first our clavicle in 3D looked like this, and in the end we're end up with something like this. It's still not perfect, but we're getting closer to the actual kind of a balanced look between how it actually looks and how we could simplify it. And I will try to do this with every element of the anatomy that we're going to work with. I will try to find a way to simplify it the best that I can, but at the same time I want to keep the organic look of it. So, and because of this, like, because this is pretty hard to find this balance, it might take time. But again, this is the right direction personally for me. I know what I'm going with this, and I know where to stop working with this. So I know where exactly I need to stop and move on to the next thing. And now it's just all about finding that kind of place and being sure that this is it works. So let's just move on. And even if it's not going to work 100%, I'm still going to consider it as a successful run with the revisiting fundamentals, because again, you're going to revisit fundamentals on multiple occasions, and what I'm doing now is revisiting fundamentals another time. Like, I already revisited fundamentals on multiple occasions throughout my artistic journey, so this is another one. And the more revisiting, the more I will revisit fundamentals, the better I will understand them. I will basically solidify my base and make a good fundament, whatever how it's called probably. So basically, the more I will do this, the better my fundamentals will, the stronger my fundamentals will be. So regardless of the results, it's still a good way to kind of revisit things, not just by studying purposely, but actually knowing what you're doing and knowing what you will get from it. Yeah. And it's all about asking the right questions and finding the right answers, as we already talked about multiple times. So yeah, I guess, like, to sum up things, again, we dealt with the most complex thing, is pelvic bone. We kind of find a proper way. I probably will utilize the second part, because it's a little bit more simple. So we also simplified, like with clavicle I definitely will test. I don't like how it basically simplified. It still kind of seems a little bit more complex, but maybe because it's going to move a lot and change position a lot, maybe I will keep it close to what it actually originally looks like. I kind of like how ribcage looks. We still might add some additional changes to it to make it appear a little bit better, but at this point I kind of like how it looks. So so the good thing is, yeah, we kind of covered ribcage, we covered pelvis, and yeah, the hardest part and the things that will be the holding structure for the human anatomy. And also we kind of created a simple version of the wired cylinder for our spine. So spine is going to be the core that's going to hold everything together. So it's actually not that hard to simplify. I mean, this is just a freaking wired cylinder. Of course, it's going to be a little bit bigger in its actual core and get smaller towards the top. And in the neck area is going to be slightly small. And I will try to not add those connection points, because almost every vertebrae has, like, from multiple sides, so like almost every vertebrae has things to the sides, and also one thing from the back, and the one thing from the back is pretty big. It's actually probably the wrong one. Yeah, I kind of do it wrong way. So these things will help us to connect to each vertebrae a rib, which we're not going to simplify at all because we don't need that complexity. We're going to assume that they are there. Let's just assume that they're there. And the one from the back, it's going to be kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to simplify it properly though, because again, I'm probably not going to use it. Yeah, it's probably too much. Whatever, so, yeah, I guess that's kind of it. Again, each vertebrae is much more complex than just a regular cylinder, but again, we could simplify it to our actual cylinder. The only reason why it could be a good idea to actually separate those, because that way we will understand the direction of the turn. Because if head is going to turn, the vertebrae, of course, is going to twist. I mean, we will try to explain simplistically this by, so again, for instance, this is a static position for a vertebrae, and let's just try to create a dynamic one. So this is a static position, for instance. Let's just go with 3. And the dynamic position is going to be something like this. So, and it's not just a tilt in one direction. So yeah, the dynamic position could be like this, but the important thing to keep in mind is the rotation along the z-axis, how we will explain that. And for that, we're probably going to use a side line that will basically shift like this. And ideally, it could be actually a good idea to picture a ribbon inside of it. That ribbon inside of the cylinder. But again, it still kind of becomes a little bit more complex than we would need, so we'll basically find the balance. Either way, so hopefully it will work eventually. Not hopefully, it will work eventually, because again, as long as I'm trying, I will make it work. So it's all about like trying, and in the end it will work. So yeah, I guess on that note we will end the session again. So thank you for watching, thank you for being here, have a nice day or night, and see you in the next session, which is again going to be next, probably Sunday, because again, for now, Saturdays are kind of, most cases, we're not going to stream on Saturdays. So in most cases, Sunday. It's going to be a Russian stream, but again, every English-speaking audience could basically visit it, and I will switch to English anytime you will ask me. So that's it for this. Again, thank you, and bye. Tony says bye too.